Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about really this ludicrous idea that people have that they need to be afraid of omega-6 fats, which are one of the two types of polyunsaturated fats, and polyunsaturated fats are the type that are essential, meaning your body cannot make them on its own, and they are required for survival, at least in trace amounts. In other words, you don't necessarily need large amounts of these, but you do have to have them in your diet or you will eventually die. And that's just the simple reality of it. And of course, even deficiencies in them can create a lot of health problems. We have this idea out there that polyunsaturated fats, and in this case, I mean, they can come from a lot of different foods, and people need to understand the different ratios if you want to know what's in your foods. But these are oftentimes thought of, as vegetable oils, but that's not necessarily where we're going to get them in a natural source. So you would think of nuts, you would think of seeds, things like that, right? That's your biggest sources of omega-6 fats. Grains to a lesser extent, but there's such small amounts in there. But what you have found in more recent years is people who tend towards the ketogenic or the carnivore type diets have come to believe that eating large amounts of saturated fats is somehow healthy when it's not. It really isn't. And I'm not saying in moderation it's harmful because it isn't there either. In other words, you shouldn't be terrified of those either. Right? You shouldn't be like, oh no, all saturated fat is bad, and if I have any, it's going to cause me health problems. That's just simply not true. That's nonsense. In excess, it will. So we come over to the topic of fats with that, but what you find is that people in those categories, they kind of push the agenda the other way because they want to argue against different types of science. They won't look at modern stuff. They'll usually want to go back and try to debunk stuff like the Ansel Keys 7-Nation study, things like that. It's not really regarded as good science in the modern world anyways. So instead of looking at modern data that we have, they just ignore it and they'll go back and argue with that. But one of the things that these people often hit on is the fact that there was a hypothesis out there stating that omega-6 fats are inflammatory. All right. And it's because there was a possible pathway detected like 20 years ago. I mean, I could be off a little bit, approximately 20 years ago. That showed that the human body could convert other omega-6 fats into something called arachidonic acid, which is an omega-6, but it's very pro-inflammatory in the body. Okay, it can cause inflammation. Now, for the record, saturated fat causes inflammation. So essentially, the hypothesis was that omega-6 fats could be converted in the body into a fat that is just as inflammatory as saturated fat is. Okay, right? So then therefore everyone is then scared of it too. Well, the reality turned out that the conversion pathway is actually not that efficient. And so under normal circumstances, humans don't really convert that at a pretty high rate. Some animals do, humans really don't. And we can train our bodies to be more efficient at it if we really want to, but that's kind of another topic completely. So the whole idea with it is that that this would cause inflammation and then again risk of cardiovascular disease, other stuff. Well, it turns out that's not the case. And when you look at more modern studies, stuff that we usually find is that when saturated fat in the diet is replaced with omega-6, inflammation goes down. Okay, that is what the general observation seems to be. Right? If you have a large amount of saturated fat, you replace it with even omega-6, any polyunsaturated fat, inflammation goes down. Now, what we find is that a lot of fats are anti-inflammatory. Now, keep in mind, when we say that, that doesn't mean that they don't cause any inflammation. It means the net effect. Because a lot of stuff that you put in your body has a lot of complex processes involved. Okay? So it can do multiple things at once. So what we're looking at is the sum total inflammatory effect versus anti-inflammatory effect. Right? Does the good outweigh the bad? And keep in mind, we need some inflammation in the body. Okay? It's necessary for survival. So, that being said, it turns out that omega-6 is actually anti-inflammatory, and it's actually a reasonably strong anti-inflammatory. Omega-3 are the most anti-inflammatory, and then monounsaturated fats tend to be mildly, very mildly anti-inflammatory to neutral. Okay? See where we're going? And then saturated fats are inflammatory. Now, are those even a concern in small amounts? Not really. Not really a major concern. It's in large amounts that they are. But if we're looking to have anti-inflammatory effects in the body, and we're going to get our calories from something other than carbohydrate, because protein doesn't really work as a great calorie source for us. There's a lot of benefits to high protein, but a fuel source it is not. And not everybody's goal is to lose weight all the time, so we have to be getting calories. So we always come over to that point where people are like, well, I'm on lower. Well, why are you on lower calories? Are you trying to lose weight? Well, a lot of us are trying to gain muscle, gain weight. A lot of us are trying to maintain our weight. Okay, so we're not talking about the Gen Pop obese person here. Once you've lost the weight, we need to be looking at these other health markers. In the case of this, if you want to have reduced inflammation in the body, you should probably be eating healthy fats, okay, in significant amounts. We can make the case for eating very, very low fats in general for chasing certain body composition goals, absolutely. And it's a method I use and give to some of my clients and lifters. But that's not what we're talking about in this case. In that case, almost all fat is bad other than adding a little omega-3, right? Because you really need that. But that's a different goal, isn't it? Now, if our goal is to reduce inflammation, help with recovery, certain pains, things like that, omega-6 fats are beneficial. They're beneficial to our health. They're not something that we should be afraid of. Okay, what you should probably be reducing is things like refined sugars and saturated fat, right? Those should probably be reduced. Some of those calories can be replaced with healthier fats, okay, that will reduce inflammation. Again, we have a case of people who have ideologies that they've developed, who, once that ideology is developed, though, they want to stick to anything that fits it. And in the case of many of those people, they have enormous fitness followings, a lot of these quacks. And so because they're promoting that idea that they want you to eat large amounts of animal fat, they want all other fats to be bad, right? They want to find a reason to get rid of them in your diet because that fits their ideology. So that's usually what's happening here. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.